men come, bring us coffee, tea, and rum. One day the tonguing is done, take our leave and go. Met a fair son of town, her hair was blonde and this was brown. She made a wellerman come around. This 1960 Oday Ospray had spent her entire life with one owner on a small lake in northern Indiana. Sydney and I had traveled over 400 miles to purchase her, and I actually purchased her from the original owner's son. When we finally arrived at her new home in western Kentucky, I spent a few days going over the hull, rigging, spars, and all the sailing gear, and everything seemed to be there, and the boat really was not in bad condition for its age. The worst things were cracking of the gel coat, which is to be expected on a boat this old, and the mast did have a bend in it, but I was pretty confident I could straighten that out. The sails were in really good condition, and there was a little bit of fiberglass damage at the deck hull joint, but nothing major and nothing that a little bit of 5200 can't fix. On a calm evening, we went out for a little float test without any mast or rigging or anything, just the boat and a couple of canoe paddles and the rudder. That was just to ensure that there were no leaks and also to verify the operation of the centerboard and rudder and just make sure that the hull was generally sound, and it was. After a successful float test, I was feeling pretty confident, and I decided to actually sail the boat before beginning major work. Most of these old 60s Odays, including the Javelin and Daysailer 1, all came with a keel-stepped mast, and that means that the only way to step the mast is to pick it up vertically and put it through the cuddy into the step. Personally, I would only attempt this on the calmest of days. The slightest breeze can grab that mast and just pull it away from you, especially when you consider that you're hanging on to the extreme end of the mast, so you have most of it way up in the air over your head, and it just does not take much for that thing to get away from you. It also tends to wobble as well when you're hanging on to the end of it like that. The key is just to be slow and meticulous and keep that thing vertical. Do not let it sway in any direction. With the Tabernacle, at least if the mast were to fall, you know generally the direction that it's going to swing. But with a keel step mast like this, it could fall anywhere, so I made sure to give a wide berth to any other vehicles or boats in the parking lot. I was expecting very light conditions on this day, so I actually removed a little bit of purchase from the main sheet. One thing I noticed immediately that I found very appealing is you can reach the jib sheets very easily when sailing single-handed. I was sailing a familiar creek, Bear Creek, and the wind was out of the northwest. I was close hauled and heading for Barge Island. just a couple miles away. Sydney would be joining me later on in the day, and I think this would be her first time sailing a sloop. The Osprey is a unique design, but it's very similar to an Oday Daysailer 1. It's slightly scaled down at 16 foot with just under a 6-foot beam, and the cuddy is a little lower and a little smaller. She carries 125 square foot of sail, which is a little bit less than a Daysailer, and she has a centerboarder. A simple lever is used to raise and lower the centerboard, and I actually really like that, and I find it to be more convenient than an outhaul or a winch. The cockpit is very spacious and you could comfortably seat 4. The original advertisement says that you could seat 6, and I guess that you could do that, but I don't think it would be all that comfortable. And surprisingly, the cockpit feels a lot like my 19-foot Mariner, and the design is almost exactly the same. The way that the bench seats are constructed, it's just scaled down quite a bit. I like the fact that when single-handing, you can easily reach the jib sheets from the helm, and also both halyards can be cleated off on the top of the cuddy, which is a little bit easier to reach as well. The sails were in surprisingly good condition, with no repairs needed whatsoever, and still reasonably crisp. I'm going to have to replace the standing rigging and of course the running rigging, and I think she's going to need new pintles and gudgeons, or at least one gudgeon. You can see here where the previous owner had repaired this pintle using a stick welder, I think, and it holds just fine, but doesn't look so great. I'm thinking the screws on the lower gudgeon must have backed out due to a little bit of rot in the plywood reinforcement of this section of the transom, and so the screws must have backed out and fallen off, because he's replaced that gudgeon with a DIY solution here, which is just a steel plate and some kind of an eye. The coaming boards look pretty decent, and the floorboards will need a little bit of work. There's some bad split, cracked boards and some that are rotted, so I don't think I'm going to be able to save the full length of the floorboards, but I think I can cobble something together where at least I'll have the boards all the way to the edge of the cuddy, just in the cockpit. Other than that, it's just a matter of painting, staining, varnishing, and generally sprucing up. I returned to the launch area to meet Sydney. It would be her first time sailing in a sloop, so I would be working with her on learning how to trim the jib. We're going to hold this course for a while, so what you can do is the cleat by your left knee, you can just wrap that around, like try to keep it the same tension, yep, and yep, just exactly like that. That'll stay. Sweet. Change in the sky means a change in the weather, and once on the mouth of the bay again, the wind had become quite a bit more brisk, and we had a little bit more exciting sailing.
It's so nice outside.
I know, it's a perfect day. Clouds are coming in, actually.
What's coming in?
Clouds, which may mean the wind will pick up. It's perfect right now, though, for this boat.
Yeah.
You're supposed to dress 60s.
I could have.
I don't really know what that would be, like long skirts or short skirts. I don't know, skirts.
No, I've got this like constellation mod dress I could have worn. It's strawberry saran wrapped. They perfectly. It worked.
We were tacking our way out to the open lake, and then we would sail around Barge Island. And the water was surprisingly choppy out there on the open lake. But the round bilge of the Osprey really absorbs all that shock, and we had a pretty comfortable sail, even when close hauled. We're gonna get around the island and land somewhere.
Can we put that in the outtakes of the video where I'm just taking a bite of strawberry and it's like bonk? And I'm like, oh.
When you're in the videos, it's just you eating fruit.
Yeah, I saw those at that Dollar General. The little mini oranges. They had a whole section of stuff, and I was like, oh.
Is that where you got the strawberries?
I got these at Food Giant.
Oh.
Yep. They're actually good this time, but they weren't Food Giant brands, so they're better.
We didn't notice it while we spent some time on the lee side of Barge Island, but on the return trip, the wind had built quite a bit, even from what it was, and we were actually seeing some white caps and pretty decent sized waves, and we would have to be close hauled and tack a couple of times to get back into the bay, and that was actually a little bit exciting, more so than expected. Even had to hike out a little bit. It had turned out to be a perfect day for testing. I had seen light air, medium air, and even some rougher conditions. The Osprey handled them all.